going to be able to reproduce that same sound that you may have come across in another language, right? So that means that you already kind of have a base. Now from there is really just to figure out the rules as much as you can. It works more than people think in French. Actually, French is not that irregular with pronunciation as people think. Yes, it is hard to get the grasp of the original rules, but once you do get it, you just have to find out what are the exceptions, and you're going to be okay. And from there, it's just listening and kind of backwards engineering it to turn it into words in your head, right? Because, like I said, there's a lot of silent consonants and vowels. So you have to basically fill in the gaps in your head and kind of like, program your way almost in your head back to make sense out of it, right? So that's how French has been difficult to me. But yeah, it has been a pretty good experience so far, with, knowing this, phonetic alphabet and just basically trying to make sense out of it. That's, I think, the main takeaway.
And then for the grammar, you use Anki, and what else? Like, what would be let's say, today, like right now is the moment to do your grammar stuff, and you just started a new language. Like, what's going to be your approach?
Yeah. So for example, what I would do for grammar, yes, there is a piece of it that I do via Anki, because then I would, for example, say to myself, for example, okay, pick a verb that's irregular in French, for example, avoir, right? And then at that case, you would, at some point, I would create a card where it would ask me to conjugate that particular verb, right? In Anki. So it will come up at some point, and I'll have to come up with all the 6 forms. J'ai, tu as, il a, I don't know, whatever, but then you're gonna have the whole conjugation. So we'll ask it at some point, right? Obviously, that is not enough to make it automatic enough in your head, especially since you're just starting, with the language. Let's assume that you're just starting with the language. And then what you're gonna have to do is, just invest in books. Find a lot of exercises, as many as you can find to kind of code it in your head. There's no other way. Or if you can't do that, surround yourself with people who speak the language and force yourself to speak. There's no other method other than these 2 options, right? So, like, I'm going to tell you something. I do not normally take classes in languages, so I like to learn it from the street. If there is enough immersion, I believe that you can learn any language. Yes, Kasia?
Sorry.
Can you repeat that?
No, I just said, like, it's funny how you said it, that you learn it from the street.
That's how it happens. That's how it's happened. It's a kind of a combination of street learning and work learning, right? Or party learning, or we'll come to that in a second.
Yeah.
Immersion is, I believe, the number one thing. So it has happened to me in English, it has happened to me in Dutch, and it has happened to me in Spanish, which is why I speak those languages well, as opposed to some others, right, where I haven't had the chance to practice speaking so much. But coming back to French, now I decided, okay, I'm in Ontario, we're in the middle of a pandemic, there's not enough French speakers. I can't communicate in French at home because my wife doesn't speak it. She has very basic French, just basically first couple of lessons from Duolingo, say like that. And so I decided, okay, I have to take classes. And so I actually do 1 hour per week. So what I told my teacher is, like, I want to make sure that we speak for a little bit each of those classes, right? Even if we're going to be doing a particular grammar concept for the rest of the class, I want to dedicate 15 minutes at least to speaking, so that you say something to me, I have to respond. I get an opportunity to ask you questions so that you can practice pronunciation, sentence structure, and things like that. Now, the other thing, what I also told him to do from lesson 2, where at the moment that I felt that I could understand what he was saying, is like, okay, when you're going to be doing the lesson, 100% French. I don't want to hear any English because I know that's going to impede my progress, right? So since then, we've only been speaking French. Maybe there have been like 1 or 2 lessons where there was a moment where we switched to English just because he had trouble translating it or explaining the particular word that I had a question about without spending an excessive amount of time. But so if you're ever going to be doing classes, if you feel like you're at the level, just do it 100% in the target language because that helps. So let's see. It's been I've done about 10 weeks of these classes. I can say more in French than I was able to do before. Like I said, I already had some vocabulary and grammar, but I never was able to put it into practice. So now that part has been getting better. When we come back to the office, there's a couple of people that speak French as their first language, so I'm looking forward to be able to speak with them then. Sure, it's going to be a horrifying experience at the beginning, but that's how you learn. That's how you learn, especially in a work environment, right? Because you got to be careful what you say. If you say something wrong, you can I wouldn't say get into trouble, but you might feel embarrassed or something like that.
Yeah. And do you have some advice about that actually? Because I know you say, okay, it's scary, but you still do it. Like, for example, you gave this anecdote about going to the dentist and speaking Portuguese,
that was
how do you get yourself to do it?
I guess what you have to do is make sure you surround yourself with the people or force yourself, right? There's no other way, because if you're not going to force yourself, it's not going to come. With Dutch, for example, for me, it has been pretty easy because I was forced externally to do it. Okay, let me rewind a little bit. So when I was a student in Maastricht, so actually I needed a job, right? Because in the Netherlands, I don't know if it's still like that, but back then, if you got a job, you could get a grant from the government, so that you could
it's changed now. You don't get the. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No worries.
Right now, you don't get the full grant anymore, but you get a part of it. Okay.
So that used to be called a studiefinanciering. Stufie for short. I haven't heard anybody say it like that, but I guess some Dutch people say it.
Yeah.
No, but so if you were a foreigner, you could get it, but you had to be working a certain amount of hours per month in order to get it. So basically I was like, my Dutch was not good at that time. It was that basic Dutch from that book that we talked about. Yeah. So I was like, okay, I need a job because I just want to be able to be independent, finance my studies, be sure that when I actually start working, I don't have to pay like a studieschuld, which is the kind of debt that I know, like it's very hard, for example, in the US, like, right. Studies are super expensive, but actually, thanks to that, eventually I was able to be completely debt-free by the time I finished my studies. So what happened really was that I found that job, and it was actually a McDonald's job, right? Sounds like nothing, right? It is the most basic job you can have. It is really good because you're studying, you have flexible schedule, but really coming back to the Dutch piece, I was put on the so-called grill at the time, right? So grill. So working in the kitchen was the kind of the back office of McDonald's, you would say that, right? So there was a time when I guess some managers started figuring out that I spoke some Dutch, right? And I remember there was this manager. So he's asking, "Hey, Marcin, do you think you could take like orders from clients or something?" I told him like, "No, let's do it. Come for an hour. Go to the front. Come, we're gonna give you a register. We're gonna try it out." I was like, Jesus, what is going on? I went. And I did it, but it was really horrifying, right? Because some of the time you wouldn't understand what these people were saying, because not only are you dealing with a language that you're not that good at that time, but also you get the dialects. The Dutch is crazy because almost every village has their own particular dialect, and the Maastricht's dialect is one of the hardest of them all because it's kind of a mixture of German, French, and Dutch, and some very specific local words that nobody understands.
Yeah.
Right. So it was kind of horrifying. I did that for an hour, and I was like, okay, I never want to do this again. Right. Then comes another shift. It was a closing shift. I recall it was like from 5 to 1 a.m. So I was like, yeah, okay, I'm going to go. Came chilled to the kitchen. I was going to work in the kitchen. Now the manager was another manager. He told me, okay, so one of our cashiers is sick. You have to do the shift because you're an extra guy that we have in the kitchen. So we can miss somebody in the kitchen. So you have to go to the register. Oh my God. 8 hours of register in Dutch. Okay, so let me tell you something. So when you're at the register in a McDonald's, there you have an opportunity that if you type in something wrong in the order, you can make only one mistake. If you make a second mistake, you cannot undo. Well, you can, but you have to ask the manager for a special white card that has his name on it, and you need to swipe it on the register. It's called the pasje, right? That day, I needed that pasje, I don't know, maybe like 50 times. At some point, the manager just gave me that pasje, just use it whenever you need to, because I guess he felt sick of me asking it for it all the time, so I was like, okay, I can get through this. I just remember two things. My mouth was extremely dry, because I felt like speaking was costing me 3 times the regular amount of effort. And when I was looking at the clock, which was right next to me, that those 8 hours felt like it was 2 hours at max. The time was going extremely quick. I still don't understand why that was happening, but I just remember I felt really good afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And then every other time, I believe there was a time that our restaurant manager has just decided, oh, you're just going to be 100% sitting there on the counter just taking these orders. I was like, oh, okay. Okay, afterwards it kind of became better and better. But after the first one, I got over it. Of course, I was extremely tired by the end,
mm-hmm.
but it felt good. And if I hadn't done that time, or if that hadn't happened, chances are I wouldn't be where I am right now, because Dutch has helped me to get my job with the company that I work for. So I believe that has been definitely helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think if that hasn't happened, I probably wouldn't be either in the US or in Canada right now. So it's
Mm-hmm.
it has turned out to be a really good sequence of events, But yeah, coming back from that, just make sure that you push yourself, or make sure somebody pushes you to do this step. Because if you don't, you might be foregoing some very, excellent opportunity in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Because employers look at that, right? Mm-hmm. They just look at that.
Yeah, exactly. And
Dutch
in the
has
end,
helped me with, yeah.
Yeah, in the end, it's comparable to that first international experience we had with English, right?
Yes.
And also, as a side note to my listeners, I was also working at the same McDonald's, and I did not end up at the counter. So, yeah, therefore, I'm not in the US or in Canada. No,
Kasia,
just
but
kidding.
You're in Belgium.
But
you're in Belgium.
I'm in Belgium.
And you have a Dutch boyfriend.
That's true.
So
but my main objective is to remain, to keep working in English. That's my big goal. I still want to be in the international environments, and I want to work in English. I'm not going to compromise. And yeah, even though other languages are very handy, and I would like to know them, I still don't want to compromise on my working language.
No, I don't think you will compromise if you suddenly decide that you're going to speak to your boyfriend Dutch. At least some percentage of the time, right? And I know you guys are already doing it mm-hmm. whenever it is convenient, even if you're just talking about the everyday stuff, or particular grocery items that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you don't say carrot, you say wortels.
Well, for carrot, it doesn't really it doesn't work. But for example, for lettuce, it does.
Really,
yeah. But, so this is also something that I picked up at the McDonald's, where, I had to speak a certain level of Dutch, even working in the kitchen. And I had to learn, I think that's the best place to learn all the food vocabulary and stuff.
Yes, it is.
And we had to use certain orders. We had to scream certain things in Dutch.
Like call outs. We had to call out what's coming on the so-called bin, which was like the heated storage compartment, so mm-hmm. to say. Yeah, it was very cool, and everybody had their own versions of what they were saying, which sometimes was not very similar to the actual Dutch that was supposed to be spoken, but but it was it was kind of fun, because you could just kind of shout what was coming, and it was communication.
Exactly.
And it was rudimentary, but it was communication.
Exactly. And anyway, I think it was a really funny experience, Now looking back, it's fun to talk about it, and see what you got out of the experience. But being there, I know, was sometimes a bit of a pain due to the nature of the job, because it was quite exhausting as well.
It was exhausting, but maybe it wasn't that bad, because you were standing all the time, which could mean that you were keeping fit.
Yeah, but anyway, I can definitely recommend this to anybody who's young and wants to go and study and have a side job. It's definitely a great one, because it's also not sponsored by McDonald's, but but it's worth it, because in the end you get so many international people also working there, so it's another place where you can make friends. And well, not only international people, I would say it's a nice combination of the locals and the international people, which makes it even more fun, right? Because you can kind of get to know the place where you live and the different accents and stuff. And and as a student, I think it's really worth it, because of the stability that it brings and the independence. Exactly. And definitely can recommend looking back. But
Kasia, I still believe that a large part of the cultural identity came from McDonald's.
Really? In what way?
A lot of the people that I've met were locals, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of these people, like, whether you like it or not, you make a connection with them. Mm-hmm. So you do find out about the local customs. So